Hello, do you think you have insulin resistance but you are not sure what the symptoms are? Well, stay tuned because I will be going through 15 most common insulin resistant symptoms in women. Now, before we start talking about symptoms, make sure that you have seen my video on insulin resistance explained, because I go a little bit more in depth on what insulin resistance really is. But we are going to go quickly through cliff notes. Now, what is happening in our healthy body when we are digesting food and creating energy? Here we have our happy, healthy cell. What happens is we have higher blood sugar, our body is creating insulin, which is then opening the insulin receptor, insulin lock, and is allowing glucose to go into your cell and create energy. So this is a happy cell, this is nice fed cell, and we don't have too much glucose in the bloodstream. Now, what happens when we become insulin resistant? Our body has a high level of glucose in our bloodstream. So eventually our insulin receptor changes and stops being sensitive to insulin. So because it changes, the insulin cannot open the lock anymore, and therefore the glucose cannot go inside the cell. So our cell is sad, we don't have enough energy, and also we keep on having high blood glucose, which in turn makes us create more and more insulin and makes our cells more and more insulin resistant. So as you can see, the glucose didn't get into that cell, so we don't have energy. Now, because of that, let's go through our most common symptoms. Now, the first symptom is going to be fatigue. Now, you have seen what I have just explained, so it makes sense that whenever we have insulin resistance, we are tired because our cells cannot properly create energy. The second one is hunger, because what happens with this extra energy that we have here in the bloodstream? It goes to our fat. So sometimes, even if you are on a calorie deficit, your cells are not getting energy. So you are fatigued, and your cells, because your cells are starving, are sending the message to your body, I'm hungry, I need more energy. So that's why we have hunger as well. Now, the next thing is problems with concentration. This is again tied with how we create energy. Our brain especially needs a little bit of glucose to function properly. So if our cells are exhausted, our concentration is going to go down. Now, another thing is weight gain. So again, in this vicious cycle, our muscle cells, our brain cells are not getting glucose that they need. But this glucose eventually has to go somewhere, and that eventually will go to our fat cells. So sometimes with people with insulin resistance, we can see that even restricting calories, they will not lose weight because A, they have huge hunger because of this, and B, all of that eventually is going to go to your fat. So you are starving and you're gaining weight. So that's why the weight gain is very, very common in insulin resistance. And another point number 5, inability to lose weight. Because then again, when we restrict calories, it doesn't matter because we are eating less calories, but they're still not going to the cells. So our whole energy metabolism is basically broken. Now, another thing is tiredness after meal. So you know that feeling when you have your lunch and you would like to go to nap? Yes, very often this is a sign of problems with blood sugars, which is then very often tied to insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, diabetes, depending how severe your level of insulin resistance is. Now, another thing is waking up not rested, no matter how much sleep you have gotten. And then again, it's tied again to how we create energy, and that we cannot create ATP, that is actually our energy in our body. Next thing is sugar cravings. Why do we have sugar cravings in particular? Sugar is the easiest thing to digest. And now when your cells are not getting any glucose inside, they really want glucose. All the carbohydrates are basically broken down into the glucose, whether they're starches or whether it is already processed sugar. So when your body is starving and it feels fatigued, it will demand carbohydrates and sugar. So that is not your fault, that is fault of insulin resistance. Now, next thing is upregulation of androgens. Very often, because of high levels of sugar in our blood as well, our androgens are being upregulated, and those are certain types of testosterone, for example. And that in turn can cause a lot of different symptoms that are tied to high androgens. Now, if you haven't seen my videos about acne with Pcos, about hair loss and about hirsutism, so excessive hair growth, make sure you watch those videos because I go a little bit more in depth in them. But As I just mentioned, high androgens are very often connected to depression and especially anxiety, because high androgens also might cause our other hormones to be upregulated, like adrenaline, like cortisol. All of our stress hormones that we get in stressful situations are being upregulated due to excess androgens in our body. Now, another thing what happens when we have a lot of testosterone is that we might get something that's called hirsutism. That's how I spell it, and this is excessive hair growth. So for women, it is growth on your chin, it might be on your chest, on your belly, on your back, on the places that are usually connected to male hormonal profile. Another thing can be acne, and this is again connected to testosterone. As we know, when we are growing up, we have high levels of androgens, and when we go through puberty, we have high levels of testosterone. So that is why when usually most people have acne. However, with people with insulin resistance, acne is connected to it as well. Now, another point is PCOS, so it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. And again, I have a lot of videos on polycystic ovarian syndrome, so make sure you check those. Now, another thing is infertility. Because all of those things that happen here, our ovaries cannot properly create eggs. So very often they don't get enough energy as well. The energy cannot go to the egg and create a healthy egg. But that is usually connected to problems with ovulation. They're then connected to all of those problems, all the fact that our cells are not working properly. Now, another and last thing that is a little bit more generalized as well, and this is both for men and women as well, is high blood pressure and high triglycerides. So very often when we think about high triglycerides, we're thinking about, oh, I've been eating too much fat. Actually, it's the other way around. So very often insulin resistance is causing high triglycerides because high levels of sugar in the blood have to go somewhere. So they usually go to triglycerides. Now, quick thing, what is the difference and why, for example, you hear a lot about ketogenic diet, and very often actually in UK, for all of those first symptoms, ketogenic diet and low carb diet is being recommended. It is because when you start producing ketones, your cells work completely differently. So when you starve yourself of carbohydrates and you eat less than 20 grams of carbohydrates a day, your body starts creating ketones from fat. So it's turning from carb fuel, from sugar fuel to a fat fuel. And what happens then? Now here we have our keto-fed cell. For ketones to enter the cells, we don't need any receptors. So basically, the ketones are just going inside the cell and they can create energy this way. They're also much more efficient and much more clean energy, so we don't get so many free radicals from metabolizing ketones. But I'll make a separate video about ketogenic diet as well. And this is it. This is 15 most common symptoms and signs of insulin resistance in women. Make sure you like this video, subscribe and click the bell so you get notified about future videos, and let me know down in the comments. Do you have insulin resistance? Did you have some or all of those symptoms? Let me know and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.